Marcos says he's been getting conflicting information on the alleged secret deal between ex-President Duterte and Chinese President Xi Jinping. He slammed the former official, saying, "Marami silang palusot."
And we will be getting to know the UP Law Jessup team, who bagged top honors in this year's Jessup Cup, beating more than 600 teams in the biggest moot court tournament in the world.
Welcome to the show. I'm Regina.
I'm Riza Diaz.
And I'm Shawn.
Fears of a wider conflict are growing after a dramatic escalation of conflict in the Middle East over the weekend. That's after Iran launched more than 300 missiles and drones at Israel on Saturday.
Now, this is the first direct attack launched from Iranian territory after decades of shadow warfare between the two countries. And it was in response to Israel bombing the Iranian consulate in Syria that killed several of Iran's top commanders 2 weeks ago.
Air raid sirens sounded in Israel and the West Bank overnight, signaling the start of an attack that had been anticipated for days. The strikes left limited damage thanks to Israeli, US, and UK fighters intercepting and shooting down 99% of the more than 300 drones and missiles before they hit land. There were also no deaths reported, but 12 people were brought into the Soroka Medical Center in southern Israel overnight. Still, Israel's Western allies, including the US, UK, France, and Germany, were quick to condemn Iran for what they called a destabilizing act for the region.
Now, along with this, Iran's Revolutionary Guards seized an Israeli-linked container ship, MCS Aris, in a helicopter operation near the Strait of Hormuz. MSC Aris is owned by Gortel Shipping Incorporated. MSC has since confirmed the seizure, saying that they are now working with relevant authorities for the safe return and well-being of its 25 crew members, which includes 4 Filipinos. The Department of Migrant Workers, meanwhile, has contacted the families of the Filipino seafarers, assuring them of full government support and assistance.
The Foreign Affairs Department is urging all parties to refrain from escalating the situation and to work towards a peaceful resolution of the conflict. The Philippine Embassy in Tel Aviv has already issued a warning advising against travel to several areas in Jerusalem, West Bank, Gaza border, Lebanon, and the Golan Heights. Preparations are also being made for the possible evacuation of Filipino nationals from these regions. According to the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWA, there are approximately 30,000 Filipino workers in Israel.
Nagpa-standby na kami ng repatriation structure kung sakasakaling kailanganin kaagad ito. So inalerto ko na yung ating mga welfare officers doon to prepare. And we're also preparing the budget para in case magkaroon ng mass repat, ito will be ready.
Well, joining us tonight to discuss this very serious matter, we have with us live via Zoom DFA Undersecretary Eduardo De Vega. Good evening, Usec. Thanks for making time for us today. Usec, can you hear me? I think you might be on mute. Usec De Vega, could we try that again? Might need to check if he was on mute or not. We wanted to find out.
Hindi po kayo narinig.
And that should not have gone out. That is our guest booker trying to talk to our guest, DFA Undersecretary Eduardo De Vega. But again, a few things to underline about this conflict. Number one, it is in retaliation for Israel striking the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria on April 1st. So this is a tit-for-tat kind of situation. We don't know yet. We were going to ask Usec De Vega how many Filipinos there are in Iran. We know that there's about 30,000 in Israel.
Right.
And the other thing that I wanted to underline about this is that we mentioned shadow warfare earlier. The difference this time is that this is now spilled out into the open, right? This is being seen by some analysts have said that because this is a direct strike, although there were no casualties, the fact that Iran went ahead and did an open strike on Israel has large implications for the region, and that's why there are a lot of fears at the moment of growing Middle East conflict.
And just some context, last week we already briefly talked about this. A lot of people were waiting for the retaliatory strike.
This was
And
anticipated, yes.
It was anticipated. They just didn't know when it would come. But I do recall last week, Wednesday, which was Eid al-Fitr, even Ayatollah Khomeini, his address to celebrate Eid al-Fitr was very, very much loaded. So, and you're right, it has spilled across borders, and people are now looking whether this would be the newest, biggest flashpoint.
It has become a real flashpoint in the Middle East because it's, as we said, it's open warfare and was anticipated. And now you have Israel saying as well that they will exact a price, quote unquote. They will exact a price for this missile strike, even though it did not, as far as we know, kill any civilians or anyone for that matter. The fact that it's a tit for tat kind of situation. They feel like they're in a position where they have to respond. Otherwise, do they lose this war? Right?
That's why it's most important that we get to talk to Usec De Vega,
De
or
Vega.
De Vega rather, for updates, especially for the sake of our OFWs there in Iran and Israel. Usec De Vega, good evening. Can you hear us?
Good evening.
There we go.
Good evening. Good evening. I think you can hear me.
Great. Thank you for trying to dial back in. Listen, these are terrible times, of course, and I imagine how difficult your job has been in these last few days. First, give us, please, an overview of the situation there in the Middle East, both in Israel and Iran.
Well, in Israel, of course, you already know that the Iron Dome was successful in intercepting over 300 drones which were fired from Iran. In fact, some were also shot down by Jordan because it was passing through Jordanian airspace. Not all the missiles were fired from Iran. There were from other countries as well. A many-pronged attack. There were some from Iraq, for example, from Yemen, from Lebanon, all directed towards Israel. But the Israelis were prepared, and no casualties, including Filipino casualties, occurred. So what is happening now is that the international community, including the Philippines, are calling for all parties, in this case, for example, Israel, not to escalate tensions because the Iranians already said before the international community that they have made their response. They gave an answer to Israel's attack on their embassy, and they consider the matter, well, we've done it. It's like, you did this, we did this. Case, so we're equal, we're even. We move on. But it depends on how the Israelis will move, given that they already are facing various hostilities. And there's still a situation in Gaza, and the attacks from the Hezbollah in southern Lebanon towards northern Israel. But right now, the Filipinos in Israel themselves are safe. There are no indications that they want to go home, according to Ambassador Jun Laido. He has made just the standard advisory for them to take precautions, be careful, and avoid certain areas. The Filipinos know that. I myself have served as a diplomat in Israel, so that's part of everyday living in Israel. Being prepared, being ready in case the sirens strike or sound and you're supposed to shield yourself or go to the bomb shelters. There are concerns, of course, from the world, but I'm a diplomat and we're always optimistic for a peaceful solution and that cooler heads will prevail. There are 30,000 in Israel, just 2,000 in Iran. But in both cases, we'll be ready to bring them home in case they want to go home.
right,
But our ambassadors have not yet indicated that that is necessary.
Usec, I just wanted to know what would be the Philippines' official diplomatic position in this conflict as you said, we have Filipinos in both countries, way more in Israel than in Iran. But where is the Philippines positioning itself officially?
Well, we say we're a friend to all, enemy to none, and we're one of the few countries, for example, in Southeast Asia, which have diplomatic relations with all countries involved. We have diplomatic relations with the Israelis, with the Iranians, with the Palestinians, and with most Arab countries in the region, with all Arab countries in the region. So we are in a position to balance. We have our interests in Israel, of course, but we also are friendly with Iran. So our position, as highlighted by the DFA statement, is that we just call on all parties to exercise restraint because, well, the Philippines has always been known to be an advocate for peaceful settlement of disputes and the rule of law, international law, for all of us to adhere to the principles of international law. So that includes nonviolence. And the United States is our ally. The president just came from there. And the United States president himself is telling Israel, we're your allies. But in effect, you won in the sense that they attacked you, but there were no casualties. So we're even. It's time to move on instead of trying to inflict or attack Iran further. For Iran's part, they were able to show their people that they would respond to Israel in case Israel attacked them. And you could see from the streets of Iran, the Iranian people are happy that the Iranian government launched this counterstrike. Although there were no attacks, no casualties, the message was clear. Remember, it was not just from Iran, which where the missiles came from. Surrounding countries also fired at Israel. Not as many as Iran did, but it seemed to be a concerted effort. So it was a message to Israel.
Right.
So in that case,
Usec, I wanted to ask you.
Yeah.
Something you said earlier, let's just circle back to it. You said, as of now, none of the OFWs or the Filipinos in these affected countries want to come home yet. But should they, then you would be willing to repatriate them. I was just curious whether you always have that kind of like backup plan. As the DFA, is it that easy to mobilize a repatriation plan? Is there always that as a plan B, as an option for any of our OFWs?
Complicated, of course, but we have plans for every embassy has contingency plans in case there is a need for immediate repatriation. In the case of Israel, the Israelis themselves have such plans in case they have to evacuate people, and the Filipinos will be part of it. For example, when they evacuated the southern part of Israel, after the Hamas attack on October 7, it was not just Israelis, but foreign residents, workers, including Filipinos, were evacuated by the Israelis. So we always have measures. The difficulty is just like for example, the Kuwait-Iraq war the Gulf War in 1990, when we were talking about thousands upon thousands at the same time. That would necessitate multilateral cooperation, including from the International Migration International Organization for Migration. No? Nevertheless, let's not be alarmist. Let's be ready, but at the same time, hope that in the end, it will not escalate.
Can I just clarify, is there a Philippine consulate or embassy in Iran, in Tehran?
Yes, and I'm in touch with our ambassador, Ambassador Roberto G. Manalo. He's supposed to be meeting the Ministry of Foreign Affairs today. Of course, we have a different time zone in Iran, so we're awaiting his report.
Okay. Just picking off something you said there, I feel like how Israel responds to this is almost beside the point, because Israeli minister, for instance, Israeli Minister Benny Gantz, has, for instance, already said that they will exact a price for this aerial strike launched by Iran. I think the larger point there is that the conflict in the Middle East has escalated. So I guess the question for me is, how are we looking at this long term in terms of protecting our citizens there? Because I think it's
always protecting our citizens. Though our embassies in the Middle East are well aware, our ambassadors there and people there are well aware of the volatility of the situation. They always have contingency plans in place, and they always report to us whenever they recommend that we raise alert level or we call for mandatory repatriation and so forth. You mentioned the call of the Israelis. The Israeli government does not function like the presidency of the United States or the Philippines, where one person could decide unilaterally to attack. There's supposed to be a committee deciding this. So the foreign minister said those words, but it doesn't mean that is the sole position of Israel. In other words, it is still possible that in the end that they will not exact measures the way we would anticipate, such as an actual invasion or actual launching of missiles or bombing. So let's see what happens. But I'll await and report to you what our ambassador in Tehran says after his meeting with the Iranians. I am sure the Iranians are also getting ready in case the Israelis are serious about a counterattack. But let's put it this way. They managed to attack the embassy in Damascus, leading to the death of Iranians. No Israelis died during the launch by Iran of all those missiles and drones. So that's something to consider, the issue of proportionality. And it's a very volatile situation. We need a resolution to the conflict. Let's remember there are seafarers being hostage by the Houthis in Yemen, and they're not going to be released until there's peace or there's a cessation of hostilities between in Gaza, until the attacks against the Palestinians in Gaza stop. So it behooves upon all peoples in the region to try to resolve this peacefully instead of escalating already a situation, a bad situation further. Philippines again is friendly to all these countries, and the presence of our overseas Filipinos is actually an asset because it gives a positive image for these governments of our country, and they become more willing to assist our country because of their high regard for the Philippine nationals who live with them or work in their countries. So we thank our kababayans as well for that.
And then just very quickly, you brought it up already, Usec De Vega, the seamen who were captured by the Houthi rebels, no hope in the near future of getting them released?
Okay, there's 17. I'm always hopeful, but right now it's not possible to get them released because there's still a war in Gaza. However, at least we're able to monitor how they are, and their families here receive regular calls from them. Now we have also the other ship, which was taken by the Iranians, the MSC Aris, which has 4 seafarers. But there are indications that they will be released because soon, because they were not taken as a political message. I mean, they're not being used as hostages or anything. So we can be optimistic in that. Iran recently, or some months ago, took over a ship which they claimed to be their ship. If you remember, and eventually they released the 18 seafarers who were there.
Yeah.
So there's room for optimism for the 4. As for the 17, we'll keep doing what we can.
Okay, and we will keep checking in with you guys. We're just hoping there's a light at the end of the tunnel soon. Thanks so much for making time for us tonight, DFA Undersecretary Eduardo De Vega.
And back here at home, Metro Manila braced for a completely different kind of strike, a transport strike. Piston and Manibela held another one today to protest the April 30 deadline for jeepneys to consolidate. We have News 5's Gerard De La Peña following this issue for us, and he joins us now with more details. Hi, Gerard. How did today's transport strike go?
Well, Shawn, same as before, the government has downplayed the impact of this latest transport strike while transport groups beg to differ. What's for sure is that both groups remain on the opposite ends of the PUV modernization program, with the April 30 deadline for consolidation fast approaching. Just like in previous protests, it's the riding public that gets caught in between. Commuters along Commonwealth Avenue in Quezon City had a hard time catching a ride to start the week, with groups Piston and Manibela on strike.
Grabe kasi kahirap sumakay ngayon kasi puro siksikan eh. Kaya araw-araw naman daw, pero ngayon napakahirap kasi sa ngayon eh.
Officials earlier identified 13 critical areas in Metro Manila that could be affected by the transport strike, although they are seeing only minimal impact. The MMDA said libreng sakay will continue to be available for stranded passengers. The transport strike is still in protest of the mandatory franchise consolidation under the PUV modernization program. Piston and Manibela said they will continue to hold protest actions despite the government remaining firm on the April 30 deadline.
Ito'y build-up lamang doon sa mga nalalapit na deadline na itinakda ng administration. Kung kaya't kailangan namin ipakita yung aming lakas at pagtutol at pagkondina doon sa pagtatanggal sa aming karapatan na maghanap buhay sa public service.
Hindi po matatapos dito. Nagsisimula pa lamang po tayo dito sa ating laban. Bago mag-May 1, asahan po natin na mas marami pang kilos protesta, mas marami pa ang sasama sa atin, at mas marami pa ang magigising dito sa bulok na programa, palpak na programa ng gobyerno.
As of April 1, more than 77% of PUV units nationwide have been consolidated. Densely populated Metro Manila, though, has the lowest consolidation rate among the regions at 52.5%. Meanwhile, because of the transport strike, officials opted to postpone the ban on e-bikes and e-trikes on national roads. The policy was supposed to take effect today, which would mean fines for violators. The full implementation will now take effect Wednesday, April 17.
Hindi pa po kami mag-i-issue ng ticket today at tomorrow. Starting Wednesday, magti-ticket na kami. Consideration nga po nitong transport strike din hanggang bukas ay hindi po tayo maniniket. Pero hindi po free pass yan para po gumamit pa rin sila noong mga national roads natin kung saan sila ipinagbabawal.
Shawn, we talked to some e-bike and e-trike users about the ban, and obviously they are not in favor of it. But some others say that they are willing to comply, while the others said that they will just take their chance despite the sanctions. Shawn.
All right, thank you so much for those updates. News 5's Gerard De La Peña.
We're going to pause for a quick one, but right after that, former President Duterte launched new verbal attacks at President Marcos during a prayer rally in Davao City over the weekend. The details from the big story returns.
Watching the big story.
Research mission. Let's get the details from Brian Castillo. Brian, what happened there?
That's right, Reg. Even the Philippine mission meant to conduct hydrography research in Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal did not escape China's surveillance and blocking attempt. The National Mapping and Resource Information Authority was on their way to Scarborough on Sunday for geographic research when they were shadowed by a Chinese Coast Guard vessel. China Coast Guard vessel 5303 tailed and blocked BRP Ventura and the escort vessel BRP Gabriela Silang some 35 nautical miles from the coast of Pangasinan, which is within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. For maritime security analyst Ray Powell, who has been monitoring the encounter through satellite imagery, there is something new about this latest shadowing by China.
In that part of the Philippines, I haven't seen them that close. I may have seen them about that close down by Palawan from time to time, but certainly up by Luzon, this feels like new behavior from the China Coast Guard.
China, for its part, did not let up on its activity. Even after 8 hours, they continued to hound the Philippine survey mission around Scarborough Shoal.
It is certainly a message from the China Coast Guard that they intend to sort of aggressively monitor these activities around Scarborough Shoal. The message was, as soon as you come into our 9-dash line claim, we are going to shadow you.
Powell adds that this latest shadowing by China may be seen as a reaction to the recently concluded trilateral summit between the Philippines, US, and Japan.
I think right now China is trying to make it appear that it is not backing down. I don't think we're looking at a cooling off period in the future. I think things will probably remain a little tense, and we'll just have to see if everybody can kind of keep their heads.
Reg, the Philippine Coast Guard says the China Coast Guard is still monitoring the research activity as it heads to Bajo de Masinloc. Though the CCG has not directly interfered with the mission, their efforts to intimidate and impede operations remain a cause of concern in the region. Reg?
Thanks for that update. News 5's Brian Castillo.
Meanwhile, former President Rodrigo Duterte joined the prayer rally organized by his supporters over the weekend, wherein he lashed out at President Marcos once more. And one of Duterte's allies even called on the military to pull their support for this administration. Let's get more details and the rest of the story from Julie Baiza. Julie?
Riza, last night, the Dutertes led the hakbang sa Maisug Peace and Prayer Rally at Tagum City, Davao del Norte. And as you mentioned, former President Duterte took this opportunity to launch fresh tirades against President Marcos. In front of his supporters, the former president criticized the ongoing charter change push in Congress. Duterte accused Marcos of supporting the campaign for Chacha so that he could stay longer in his position. Duterte left this word of advice to Marcos.
Mr. President, be happy and finish your term for 6 years. Makontento ka na dyan in spite of the fact ng history ninyo, pagbaba ng tatay mo, hindi maganda. And yet, ang Filipino, binigyan kayo ng pagkaiintindi.
Lawmakers have long been insisting, though, that they are only looking to amend economic provisions of the Constitution. Now, aside from Duterte, Davao del Norte 1st District Representative Pantaleon Alvarez also took a shot at the president, going to the extent of asking the armed forces to withdraw their support from the chief executive.
Sa mapayapang paraan, please withdraw your support to the chief executive. Pag po nag-withdraw kayo ng suporta sa kanya, wala na siyang ibang magagawa kundi bababa sa pwesto niya.
Alvarez even warned that Marcos standing up to China could lead to war. That's why as early as now, Alvarez says the AFP should prioritize the safety of Filipinos.
Pag ba pinayagan natin na pumutok yung giyera sa West Philippine Sea, yan ba pinotektahan natin ang taong bayan?
Still, the AFP says it remains loyal to the president.
Our answer is always the same, that the AFP remains to be a professional organization. Susundan namin yung mga utos ng ating Commander-in-Chief, who is also our President.
Riza, Surigao del Norte Representative Johnny Pimentel meanwhile condemned Alvarez's statements, saying it's, quote, tantamount to sedition or rebellion. Riza?
Thank you, Julie Baiza.
And President Bongbong Marcos is not one for backing down, or for one, is not backing down. He was the guest of honor at the Foreign Correspondents Association of the Philippines, or FOCAP's Presidential Forum at the Manila Hotel this afternoon, the first event in 9 years. And he was asked about a number of things, including, of course, the supposed gentleman's agreement between his predecessor and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Here's what the president said.
Why, when we the transition period between the previous administration to this administration, did no one mention a secret agreement? Why was it kept secret? That's these are very simple questions, but I'm finding a great deal of difficulty finding answers for them, because I hear one thing and another thing and another thing and another thing. It's all very maraming palusot. I do not think the Chinese government, I don't think Beijing will just make up and just out of nowhere say there was a secret agreement when there was no such thing.
Pero kahit nagkakainitan sila Marcos at Duterte, Marcos says his administration will still not hand Duterte over to the International Criminal Court, or ICC, in relation to its drug war probe.
Will the Philippine government hand them over if the ICC...
We don't recognize the warrant that they will send to us.
So that's a no?
That's a no.
Interesting. Maraming palusot.
Maraming palusot. Pero despite that, hindi niya ibibigay si former President Duterte sa ICC. And he reiterated na, we withdrew in 2019. We have functioning courts. They have no jurisdiction. Right. So very consistent pa rin si President Marcos. And of course, I guess was juicy recently. As we mentioned, there was a prayer rally in Davao, again, led by former President Duterte over the weekend. And of course, the current President Marcos was asked about his relationship with the Duterte family at that FOCAP event. Matipid ang naging sagot dyan ng ating presidente. Let's listen to what PBBM said.
It's complicated. Right. It's complicated. But if you ask about the one, of course, that I have the most contact with is Inday Sara. And how we were with each other during the campaign, after the election, it hasn't really changed.
That's the status. It's complicated.
It's complicated.
So
it always is.
Yeah, so is this other issue. Kasi tinanong din si President Bongbong Marcos about the West Philippine Sea in that said meeting, and he clarified the circumstances that would lead to us, look in the mutual defense treaty being triggered. Ito ang sinabi niya.
Well, as long as they have actually caused casualties and it has killed the servicemen, then that whatever their designations are, whether they're merchant marine or Coast Guard or actual gray vessels or Navy vessels, it does not matter. That is an attack on the Philippines by a foreign power.
Okay, so some clarity there with what can invoke or trigger that mutual defense treaty with the United States. We were always wondering what an armed attack meant, and that's straight from the president's mouth. He also said, PBBM that is, that this was also aligned with what the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said last week. He met, of course, with the Defense Secretary in the U.S. when he was there at the end of the trilateral summit with Japan. And finally, another area where the president has gone in a completely different direction is the matter of, this affects us, press freedom.
Unlike many of my predecessors, I do not seek collaboration, for that implies a surrender of your independence. I am of the opinion that national interest is better served by a press that is critical rather than a press that is cooperative.
Well, up next, we'll be speaking with the members of the UP Law Jessup team about their journey to becoming international moot court champions. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
the UP. I didn't know you had roles, first of all. Congratulations.
Thank you.
When did you get back to the Philippines?
Last April 8th.
Yes.
April 8th.
Yes. So right after we won, the next day we flew back to the Philippines.
Okay, first things first, we do know that the Jessup is the oldest, most prestigious moot court competition of its kind. And the Philippines has won thrice. UP Law has won twice, thanks to you guys. You beat Ateneo by 1 time. But what was the case, hypothetical case, that you guys won? Can you tell us?
So it's about a fictional case about 2 countries. The topics primarily dealt with statelessness. So one country decided to render some of the protesters or activists stateless. And there are questions of whether or not that complies with international law. And then there's a second part to the problem, which I think was Shenzhen focused more on.
Which deals with the recognition of a nationality conferred by a state. Because we see now that there are states who grant nationality on the basis of investment with no residence required, no existence of familial ties. And how would other states recognize that nationality? So in the hypothetical scenario, there was a state which refused to recognize a nationality conferred through investment. And then the last issue was on the powers of the UN Security Council to impose binding legal obligations on the state. So on the quarter rounds, octo rounds, semifinals, up until the final rounds, we were arguing for the respondent, the Kingdom of Remisha, which wanted the nationality to be recognized and which also wanted to retain the right to deprive nationality.
It also, I know you said it's all fictional, but it sounds like you're taking from real life examples here. I mean, we could easily name some real life examples that we could apply, that this could apply to. But talk us through the training. What was it like?
So
how do you train for something like this?
Yeah.
So we're given the case months ago. And the first part of the competitions are written memorial. So you're supposed to make written pleadings where you argue for both sides. So you have a presentation for both sides. So a lot of that deals with research and writing skills. And after you submit them, then you have the oral part, which is you argue in front of judges. We had the national rounds first. So to be able to compete in the international rounds, you have to qualify. So we had the national rounds, and a few teams from the Philippines was able to qualify to the international rounds. And then we trained for the international rounds separately. So most of the training comes with just giving the speeches again and again, asking judges to ask us questions, and practice answering various questions, since the amount of questions the judges can ask is basically or virtually unlimited. So we have to prepare for the different possible questions being asked.
You beat like 600 teams. Wow. Were you seen as really the team to beat coming into the tournament prior, or were you an underdog? And then, after a couple of, you said, of course, it was a process leading to that actual day. Was there a big turnaround at some point?
I think definitely UP College of Law has a certain reputation in the international moot court competition domain. But then, because in the national rounds, we didn't win championship. So we were only placed at the third. We were only third place. So we really had something to prove on the international level that still UP College of Law can still dominate other moot court teams. So we were kind of the underdog in terms of the other Philippine teams. But in the international field, I think UP Law has always maintained a good reputation.
Baka strategy nila yun.
That's a good point.
Sa nationals.
You're law students, right?
They seem so nice too.
They are.
They could argue any side of any topic.
You won't see them coming.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but okay, law school is really hard. It's an extra 4 years plus the bar. So it's an extra 5 years. And I was under the impression, at least my friends that went to law school had no life. How did you find time to train for this competition? And apparently there's also other teams competing in other competitions. So there's quite a lot of you. Where do you find, first of all, the time for this extracurricular activity? And 2, are you in it because this looks good on a lawyer's resume? I'm genuinely curious. How much bragging rights does this win get you on your CVs?
Definitely, it's super demanding of your time and energy. For example, our classes will end at, let's say, 8 p.m. So we start training at 9 up until 12 midnight if we're lucky, but it could last until like 2 a.m. And that will go on for days, weeks, and months up until the international rounds. But I think the key really is you have to like love it. You have to enjoy the process, because then it would really like drain you. So I think for us, at least we had the benefit of like really enjoying the process.
I think aside from the prestige, there is indeed a lot of prestige for law firms and for future careers or career opportunities if you do moot court. I think you also just enjoy the process of, it's the same problem, you're talking about the same thing again and again, but you seem to learn something new each time you do your speeches. There's something, a question that you didn't have an answer for, that you're able to find an answer to. Or you conduct research for a day to find an answer just for one question. And I think that those like small moments, I think, makes you stay or continue to like moot court.
Did you recruit amongst yourselves the team, the composition? Tell us about it.
We had to try out to be part of the team.
Okay.
So back in October, the organization in UP Law, which handles the moot court competitions, held a tryout for the Jessup team in particular. And so the maximum amount of members is 5. So fortunately, all 5 of us made it to the team. And we have our coaches, Prof. Marian Vitug and Prof. Romel Casis, to thank for allowing us, affording us this opportunity and bringing us to the championship.
So were you debaters in your past life, maybe in high school?
Yes.
Because I can't imagine wanting to
I
do...
can't reconcile. He looks so nice.
You must be a champion debater
And
in
her
high
voice
school.
is like so gentle.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You two are both have very calming presence. You don't look like you're sharks in the court.
So I was a debater from high school, even a little bit in grade school, and then I went to college, university debating, and then I got to moot court. So I had some debate experience, although you had to train being less aggressive since the format and the style is very different from debating.
And Shenzhen, were you a debater too?
No, I had no debating experience. But then I think the advantage is in mooting, you're not necessarily there to argue against the opponent, but more of to help the panelists and the judges to understand your point of view. So it's more of like whispering into their ear that this is the right argument, this is how you should see it, as opposed to like, no, you're wrong, I'm correct.
Okay.
What's the most important element in moot court in the whilst you're in the tournament? Is it the research? Is it being able to think on your feet? Is it being to argue your point factually? What do you think is the most important element here? Or is it just being articulate?
I think it's 2 parts. So you have to have the research. I think a charm will only get you so far. You have to be able to actually know the answers to the questions. But because the judges can ask a lot of things, you also have to combine that research with quick thinking skills. So you need the mastery of the topic, so you can adjust based on what's asked from you. So I think it's both research and quick thinking that I think is the key to winning. Yeah.
So what would your strategy be if you were asked a question you didn't know the answer to, for instance? Is there a framework that you go by?
It's always an option to admit that your research has not led you to that to an answer to that question. However, we haven't had the opportunity to invoke that, concession, thankfully. Yes, but I think we have the research to thank for that. We had months of preparation, and we really tried to foresee every question that will be thrown at us or every argument there is to be made.
Well, that's why you were champions. And
Wait, one quick question, because my intro says Team Captain Ignacio Lorenzo Villarreal, that's you, and then oralist Shenzhen Viernes. But I also know that, Nacho, you won Best Oralist. Can you tell us what an oralist is? Are you both oralists then, apart from you also being the team captain?
So I also awarded the best oralist in the championship round. So in the team, there are a maximum of 4 oralists, a minimum of 2. So the oralists are the members of the team who would speak and be the ones to present in front of the judges. So in each round, you'd have 2. So in the final round, it was me and Shenzhen. And when we're in the other side, it would be me and our teammate Pauline for the international rounds. So the oralist job is just to present the research. They're the ones who answer the questions, the judges, and try to persuade the judges in the oral proceedings.
well, I'm sure UP community is very proud. When you got back, was there a celebration? Baka may bonfire?
Parade, heroes welcome.
Well, there was a welcoming
At the
salubong
airport.
at the airport.
And then we have a dinner scheduled on Friday to thank everyone who helped us get here.
And is this the last of you guys as a team, or do you have more competitions na kayo din as this group, or this is it?
The teams change every year and per moot court competition. So this is the last of our team. But for those who are still on third year or second year of law school, they can still
Try
join
out
in the
again.
next year, yes.
You know, you have big shoes to fill. The last team that won the Jessup Cup from UP Law, one of them was Chito Gascon, the late Chito Gascon, of course, who went on to become Commissioner of Human Rights here. What is the dream for you guys when you graduate?
So I think
so hard.
It's so hard.
I do want. I'm quite interested in international law, so I think that's one possible option. Find career opportunities in the realm of international law. Although I also am very into litigation, so that's another possibility. Although we don't want to decide yet.
Take your time.
And Chinzan?
Chinzan?
Usually the traditional approach is to go into private practice or a law firm for the first 2 years. But I'm leaning towards going into government practice, maybe in Congress or in the judiciary. Yeah, really wanna try to like go into the system, see what's in there, see what needs to be changed, and figure out what my role could be there. So.
That's beautiful.
looks bright.
They definitely need you there.
Future looks bright with having you two
We could
there.
use a moot court winner in there, huh? Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming over to visit us. We are so flattered, and hopefully, I guess we might be talking to you guys about international law before we know it. Thank you so much again.
Congratulations.
Thank you
Ignacio
for having
Villarreal, Chinzan Viernes, oralist and team captain of the winning Jessup Moot Court Competition for 2024. But that's it. We've run out of time. That's it for the